Hi friends, I'm Renay.
I'm Roseanna.
And you're listening to Fangirl Happy Hour. Hello friends, today I have brought on Roseanna to talk about her favorite things. Look at the state of the world. We all need to talk about good things. But first, you are new to Fangirl Happy Hour as second chair, so please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Hi, well, I'm very excited to be here for a start. I'm Roseanna. I write a lot of reviews, mainly at Nerds of Feather, where I also edit, but in a bunch of other places as well, and I yell a lot on Blue Sky. Mainly about books, sometimes not about books.
You have a Hugo Award.
I do. I have a share in a Hugo Award with the rest of Nerds of a Feather.
I mean, I would claim it. We are here today to talk about Roseanna's favorite things. And I had her make a list. Listen, if you love things, you know how it is to love a thing and want to tell everybody about it. Why don't you walk us through the list that you made? You can start wherever you want. You can skip around. You can rank things if you want. Whatever is your preference. Let's go. I'm ready to hear about it. Let's go.
Well, I mean, one of my favourite things is writing lists, so I was well up for this. I'm going to do it systematically because I love order, and then the order is going to turn into chaos. But we're going to have good intention, so I'm going to start with novels. I found 2023 relatively disappointing novel-wise, but 2024 was a swing completely in the other direction. My Hugo ballot is screwed because I have too many things to nominate. First one is the boring, predictable one, which is Rakesfall by Vajra Chandrasekera. The reviewers, everyone I know has been going, and I am a basic bitch along with them. It's mad. It's absolutely insane. Brackets, complimentary. It's Saint of Bright Doors, but with the training wheels taken off.
Wait, the book, everybody was like, you have to read this book. I don't know how to explain it. And then I read it. I'm like, surely that's not true. And then I read it. I'm like, no, they were right. You have to read this book. There's no way to explain it. And you're saying that book, it's kind of like his next book, except there's no training wheels. The first book had training wheels because it did not feel to me like the Saint of Bright Doors had training wheels.
And I would have said the same thing. And then I read Rakesfall, and I can't explain the plot. It exists in my brain purely as vibes, and there's a lot of stuff about people in multiple lives, and reincarnation, and embodying archetypes, and it goes into space and into the past, and there's a bit that's a play, and there's a bit that might be a TV show, but maybe not, and it's very strange, and very impossible to explain, but if you liked Saint of Bright Doors, Rakesfall is amazing.
And if you didn't like Saint of Bright Doors, maybe run away in the other direction.
Yeah, it won't be for you. He's turned it up to 11, very unapologetically.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the way to do it if you come off a year where your first book, sweeps the award circuit. Maybe sweeps is, a strong term, but it got a lot of nomination for a book that was pretty weird.
And a debut novel as well. It wasn't like someone who'd done some safer things going into weird. It was just straight in there. No, it was surprising, but in a good way to see it just keep cropping up. Yeah, I hope we see him again in the awards.
I think the last time that happened where you had a debut that kind of just was extremely funky was probably Gideon the Ninth. That went mainstream. I'm sure there's other stuff that did weird stuff that got coverage, but I'm not cultured enough to know about it. I'm just super basic and know about Gideon the Ninth because Tamsin Muir kind of was just like, you know what? I can do this, and then just drop this extremely weird, morally gray novel on us.
And then basically founded a cult.
Yeah, but the Saint of Bright Doors is weirder than Gideon the Ninth. Maybe she primed us for weird stuff. Maybe the voters and all the awards people will have learned how to read some weirder fiction.
I can only hope, because just little spoilers, my list has a lot of really weird things on it. And indeed, thinking about cults, I'm already not going through the list systematically. I've skipped to the bottom of the novel list. But Metal from Heaven by August Clarke. I read it because a number of people basically were like, you must read this book. I will tell you nothing about it, but you must read it. And then as soon as I read it, I started proselytizing to everybody, including you, I think.
Yeah, she did. And I was like, wait, do people die that we're supposed to care about because I'm a big wimp and I can't handle character death anymore? And you were like, oh, maybe it's not for you then. But it's actually fine. If somebody spoils the deaths for me, especially the deaths of people that were the narrative wants you to care about, generally then I can read the book. It's not like I can't read the book and not like the book, but I need to prepare emotionally for losing the characters. I get extremely overly attached to characters that the narrative's like, this is a great person and you should love them, and then they kill the character off and I'm like, okay. I'm really scarred, I think, by the move to use character death as like motivation. Like, I think I read and watched too many things that did that.
Like, I think it was quite a big thing in, like, the late noughties, so probably a lot of, like, formative fiction.
But I'm looking forward to this. I actually have it out from the library right now. I just need to read it because it's going to be overdue soon.
Join the cult, join the cult. And, like, one of the things that I really love about it is it's very prosy in the sense of, I don't know if you remember when Max Gladstone had his whole thing about explaining, like, streamlined. That was the word. Streamlined prose. And this is the opposite. The prose is, you can't not notice it. And I like books that do that. I like being reminded that I'm reading a book.
I don't know if I have a preference or not.
I know a lot of people have a lot of quite strong preferences about particular things in prose that I don't. And I quite enjoy not having preference whenever it's possible, because it means that I can just pick things up and go, maybe I will like this, maybe I won't. But I don't know. It's an adventure.
And I think it probably, for me, depends on, like, what book is it. I don't need to go into, like, a romance novel for fancy, noticeable writing. I want you to tell me a very cute, giddy story and not get in your way. But, like, if I'm doing something different, like if I'm doing, like, a science fiction novel or a second world fantasy that's complicated, like, that would be okay. But it really depends, I think, on the genre for me.
Yeah. No, that's true. I read a fair bit of litfic or, like, borderline SFF litfic, and so that zone tends to be the intrusive prose zone.
Our pal Jenny has done so much heavy lifting on getting me to be into literary science fiction. She has recommended me so many things that I've tried, and I probably would not be into, like, as much as, like, the literary stuff without her, like, being like, okay, you need some trading wheels, so start here. And then move because I was trying to go immediately to the deep end, right? Oh, thank you, Jenny, for your service.
Like, she is a menace, but brackets complimentary. She's a terrible influence on my TBR.
Okay, what's next? Where are we going?
Thinking of things that are in, like, the not litfic genre, I barely even know her kind of zone. Private Rites by Julia Armfield. She has had 2 books out before. One's a novel, one's a collection of short fiction. The previous one was called Our Wives Under the Sea.
I've heard of that one. I have not read it.
She basically, her microgenre is melancholy lesbians. She loves a melancholy lesbian, and I'm here for it. And Private Rites is about 3 melancholy lesbians who are also sisters. It's sort of inspired by King Lear, but mainly it's about a near future, like, post-apocalyptic-ish or mid-apocalyptic climate fiction-y Britain where it's just raining. All the time it's raining and everything is flooding and it's just very wet and everyone is very having a moment about it and trying not to think about it.
The best way to handle an apocalypse.
Yeah. Have a little breakdown on the way into work on the bus boat. It's a lot about how people kind of experience the apocalypse kind of psychologically more. And people have disagreed with me about this, but I think it's cli-fi, but it's not sci-fi. It's very about climate, but the climate isn't like a thing to solve or a thing to be understood. It's like an act of God that's happening and to be experienced. Whereas I think if it were a sci-fi novel, there'd be more of an element of trying to understand what was happening.
I feel like I caught you having a discussion about this on Blue Sky with some people where maybe it was you, maybe it was somebody else, but they were arguing that in the previous decades, climate change fiction was, like, inherently science fictional because we were all, like, speculating about, like, what the future might look like. I was trying to think of some books in this vein. I know that there was, like, Pelo Bacigalupi had some.
Yeah, he had The Water Knife, I think, was one.
There was a book called Orleans. I can't remember the author's name right now. It was a YA novel. Obviously, there are tons out there of these type of, like, climate disaster things, but they were, like, specifically science fiction and fantasy. And as we've continued into our climate disaster in reality, what's happened is, like, the speculation part is gone, like you said. And the argument on Blue Sky was that climate novels are their own genre now. They're not necessarily science fictional because we're living in it. Like, it's our present. and the books aren't dealing with the speculation element as much. I'm probably really butchering the thread and discussion that I saw on Blue Sky, and I wish I could remember who it was, but I really think you were probably in there somewhere.
I think that was Abigail Nussbaum, who is someone I'm very happy to be confused with. I definitely had a long conversation about it with Neil Harrison and Dan Hartlam predominantly, but that kind of wandered in a different direction. I remember reading Abigail's one and being like, wow, yes, I agree with this. And I think that was where she went with hers. As a book, it also kind of strays towards being horror adjacent. Some of the climate stuff is edging towards uncanny, weird shit. I think horror kind of relies on that lack of explicability. It's a thing that's intruding into the world. And there's bits where, as we go through the book, like seaweed is turning up in places that you don't expect it, and things are turning more towards being of the sea in a way that doesn't make sense on any kind of logical level, but feels very spooky. Climate is a horrifying spectre that's intruding into the novel, which makes it sound incredibly depressing, and it kind of is, but it's also a very good book.
I mean, maybe if there were more climate horror novels, people would get more serious about taking care of the climate. Let's go, guys.
And I think some of the thing that makes it really powerful is it feels, because it's just Britain, but it rains even more, it feels so plausible. I can very easily imagine the world that I live in, but it's just even rainier. It feels like just over the hill. It's not a distant future, it's a nearly there kind of future. And I think that makes it feel more, I don't know what the word is, immediate. Other stuff I've got on here, this one's going to sound like it's really depressing as well, but it's not. This is actually a quite optimistic book, is Remember You Will Die by Eden Robbins. It's not a strict linear narrative, it's told through obituaries. The entirety of the book is obituaries of different people. You find connections between them that kind of reveal a narrative behind it. And again, that sounds like it's really depressing. It's really not. It's actually quite, maybe not hopeful, but there's a lot of good things in it, and sort of in the way that obituaries are often sort of about the people that are left behind, but also about legacy and what comes after and that kind of thing. That was one of my favourite reads this year.
You wrote a really interesting review of Remember You Will Die.
I was like, I don't think I can do this justice in like just this is what happens in the book. Is it good? Is it bad? Conclusion. So I kind of went in a different direction with it.
I thought that review was great. That review was why I added it to my TBR.
I try not to be too pleased by like authors interacting with it when I review their books, but the author was very chuffed about the review and it made me really happy.
It's really nice when people that have written something you really like are like, oh, the thing you wrote about the thing that I wrote was great. It's really this really great happy feedback loop. I really love it.
Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley, which I'm mainly bringing up because I think it's the thing that I liked the most last year that has the best chance of making it onto any shortlists. And it's nearish future Britain. Some government ministry has a thingamy that lets them kidnap people out of time, and they use it to grab people just before they would have died in history and bring them into the present. The main character of the book is assigned as a handler called a Bridge to one of them, who is a guy whose name I've forgotten, but who's from the Clarke Polar Expedition. There's a lot of themes in it. So the main character, her mother was a refugee to Britain, although her mother has strong feelings about using that word. Her father is British. She has a lot of complex feelings about race, her place in Britain, her role working for the government. And it's a lot about racism, refugees, fitting in and not fitting in, and like cultural hegemony. The thing that the author does a really good job of is you've got a bunch of these characters who've been pulled out of time and brought to the near future. And she always makes them feel of their time while also being very sympathetic. The guy from the Polar Expedition, he's a Victorian. He's from, like, the height of empire. And he embodies that, but he's still a whole person, and there are things that he picks up about the modern world, things that he changes, things that he holds on to, and he manages to feel like a real person who's grounded in his time. There are fun bits as well, so there's a woman brought from the 1700s called Margaret, who becomes incredibly, like, outgoingly lesbian. She's into fashion. She embraces the modern world really heavily, because she's like, now I get to have rights and freedoms, and I'm going to use them. And, like, she loves media, and she just really gets stuck in. And you have all these different people taking to the modern world very differently, and it uses them beautifully. It does a really nuanced picture of people struggling with oppression in different ways and reacting to it in different ways. A main character who does not always make choices that the reader likes or agrees with, but you can always see why she made the choice that she did. It's also trying to be like 5 different things in a trench coat, because it's kind of a sci-fi novel, it's kind of a lit fic novel, it's kind of a romance, it's kind of a mystery. It manages to do all of them somehow. And it's a debut. I don't know how she did it. It's great.
I just assume that everybody who writes debut novels that slap are secretly either fanfic writers or they do some other type of writing in their like non-author life. You're secretly a Patreon short story writer.
I would fully believe that, because like her prose feels just so polished.
Next.
I will give you 2 more of the novel ones, and then I will stop obsessing about novels, because I want to talk about novellas, because I have strong feelings about novellas. The 2 other ones also link into the theme of history, and they're 381 by Aliya Whiteley and The Melancholy of Untold History by Minsoo Kang. They both tackle the same ideas, but from opposite sides and with kind of opposite conclusions. And it's about how, to what extent can we know people in the past and connect with them? Is it even possible? How meaningful is it? 381 is, of the 2 of them, the one I prefer. The main body of the text is like, it's a fairly straight fantasy story, except that it's told in chunks of 381 words a piece. And it's like a young girl going on a journey, happenings happen. But then there are also footnotes and side notes from someone writing several hundred years in the future who's analysing the text, both in a kind of academic sense, but also using it as a way of their sort of personal exploration of her own life. And so we learn about this future world through her understanding of this text from the past that she doesn't fully grasp. And it's just really cool.
I don't know. When I got my history degree, like that was my favorite thing to do, was like read the primary source documents from people who were never like famous or well known.
One of the things, so my degree was in classics, and one of my favourite things is all the graffiti in Pompeii that's just some guy leaving a note to his friend, or drawing a picture of his favourite gladiator, or drawing a cartoon of himself with a big dick and saying, I have a big dick.
We're still people, even in the past.
Yep.
Turns out.
But yeah, and I think she really, really grasps in that feeling of being someone reading a historical document, reading about a person in the past and trying to reach out to them. But also is really quite obviously tackling how difficult that is. Because the main story is set kind of around now-ish, we can see what the future person is misunderstanding. And the assumptions that she's making that are bad assumptions or perfectly reasonable ones but not right. It's going, there is an act of reaching out, but sometimes the gap is too big. And I find that very interesting. And it's not something I think I've ever seen tackled before. And then the Melancholy of Untold History is kind of doing the reverse of like things that feel like there ought to be a gap and then bridging the gap. It's talking a lot about people who were telling stories and then got silenced and finding those stories again. And the person who wrote that is, I think, a working historian. I think he's a professor. In both of them, you get this real sense of an understanding of history as an ongoing process.
That was one of the struggles that I had when I would do like tutoring for history when I was in college. People would be like, I don't understand why I need to know this. And I was just like, well, I can't convince you, but history is not over. We are living in history at this moment. And I just remember all the students. A lot of the times it was like athletes who were there on like scholarship. They didn't want to take no history class. They wanted to go play football or whatever. And I would try to impress on them that part of the study of history isn't just like learning where we've been or learning why we messed up and how to fix it. It's also about using history to think about where we want to go in the future. And it was a struggle. This is another reason why I left teaching, because I was like, I can't do this, it turns out. Bye.
But yeah, if that's something that you have like a lot of thoughts about, I think of the 2 of them, you might get on with this one better, because it is super tackling those themes. It's very, very thoughtful about erasing history, and history is a thing that is consciously created by people throughout time. It's not like the major theme, but to some extent it is clearly rejecting the great man of history kind of approach.
Well, now I'm definitely interested. Let's go.
Because it is very focused on real people at a sort of normal person level. It's not about kings, it's not about generals, whatever. It's about people telling stories. That's quite rare, and I really like that. And that is a great in for me to talk about a novella. The world of the Goblin Emperor books, there's a novella that came out this year called The Orb of Cairado. And all of the previous books in that world have been told from the perspective of noble, like the Goblin Emperor is about the guy who becomes the emperor. And then the 2, soon to be 3, murder mystery novels are from the perspective, like, he's poor, but he's poor nobility. He's a genteel clergy dude. So even though he's interacting with people who are not high status, he's born to privilege. And then the Orb of Cairado is someone who is very conscious of his position as not a noble person, and how that affects him being a scholar of history. So he ends up being in this salon of all these other people who are predominantly women who have been excluded from history, teaching and study, because they're women and their husbands are not letting them study. He's there because he's not a posh dude. So he is also struggling because the person who runs his history department at his university has explicitly said that he thinks history should be written by the same kind of people that history is about. And it's someone not from that background trying to make a place for himself within the study of history.
You said this is a murder mystery. Does he murder the guy who said that history should be written about the people who it's about? Does that guy get murdered? Are we solving his murder? Because I would have murdered him.
Unfortunately not. We are solving a murder that has happened before the book started.
Oh, well. I hope that guy steps on whatever the Lego version of Lego is in that universe forever.
I hope he walks into the canal by accident. That is a novella that came out this year.
Okay, well, what about the novellas that came out last year?
I like novellas from small presses. It is a thing that I'm trying to talk about lots. So I'm going to get out of the way the one Tor novella, but it's The Practice of the Horizon and the Chain by Sofia Samatar. Yes, it's a Tor novella, but it's also really, really, really good because Sofia Samatar is just really good. And it's her tackling class. I know there's kind of a stereotype that British people cannot help but see the world through class. And I am not refuting that stereotype in the slightest, because I love books that talk about class. And this one does it really well.
I read this, and this was my first Sofia Samatar. For you said that The Practice of the Horizon and the Chain dealt with class. But for me, like, I didn't get the class stuff so much as I got an anti-hierarchy. Hierarchies themselves become, over time, toxic and unsustainable. We build stronger communities with collaborative connections. So I see where the class thing comes in with the book, but for me it was the community building aspect. The idea that hierarchies can be sustained over time and treat people well. And I don't believe that is true. I don't like a hierarchy.
I think that's one of the things that this book is really good at is I read a bunch of people's reviews of it, and I think in every single one, the person has found something different that speaks more closely to their experience of the world. And I think that there can be so many different lenses on it speaks to how well and complexly it creates its world. Like, it is a book about erasing the boundaries between things, whether they be hierarchical, class. It is about breaking down those barriers in some way. But I love that different people, the way they approach it is clearly so informed by their own experiences.
And I like that because I get to learn about other things, right? So I come from a political community organizing background, so of course I'm going to see things that are relevant to that. But like when other people talk about class or like whatever else that people might be approaching it as, where they found something in the novella that resonated with them, it's just like a really interesting way, and why I love like book reviewing. To be able to flip through the different lenses, it's like you're at the book optometrist and you're just flipping through the different ways that people are looking at a text, and I think that makes it so much richer.
It's why I like finding reviews of people who disagree with me about a book, whether it's a book I love and they hate or vice versa, because getting to see that whole different perspective on a thing I find really, really valuable. And it's one of the reasons why I'm like very pro negative reviews generally. It's a way of looking at a thing that I might not have been able to do.
That's a whole other discussion topic we could have in the future about negative reviews and the value of them.
Sorry, can of worms. I can talk about another thing that I loved, and we can move on so I do not start the philosophical review debate. I think probably my favourite novella of last year, and it is a packed zone, I read a lot of good things, was A Mourning Coat by Alex Jeffers, which is one of the Neon Hemlock novellas. It's a secondary world fantasy, but the fantasy is relatively low, because predominantly what it's about is a guy who has been nursing his terminally ill father for a number of years, and this has kind of closed him off from all of his connections to the world. And at the start of the book, his father dies, and it's about him refinding himself and his connection to the world around him and people, and his relationships and his personal growth. So his background was in costume design and sort of fashion, And so he makes himself a mourning coat for his father's funeral, which he then wears, and then people see it and are like, oh my, it's beautiful. And it sort of re-brings him into the world. It's really interesting because it is a book that is very aware of like textiles and about craft, but it's also very about connections and culture and those kind of social bonds. And I really, really loved it in a like slightly unhealthy way.
I've never heard of this.
Neon Hemlock, it's like the very easy way to get into non-tour stuff because they do a Kickstarter every year. And for a not that expensive sum of money, I can just get digital copies of all of their novellas for the year. I think it's like 6 or 7 novellas every year.
I find it interesting that this book's about fashion too. Not really something that you would see, right? Where the fashion part becomes like a plot point.
One of the things that kind of brings him back into the world and that is used as his connection to the world is he has done clothing and like fashion design for films in that world and like historical films. And he talks about that, and one of the people that he meets and sort of connects with in the book is an actor who he designed clothing for in a previous job, and they sort of reconnect. It's used as a way into culture as well as a way into his life. Yeah, it's really beautifully written. It's quite gay.
For some of our listeners, really just leave that. It's quite gay.
In fact, I'm looking at my list of novellas, and I don't think The Practice, the Horizon, and the Chain is particularly queer. I think everything else is. No, The Last to Drown is a bit as well, actually. So The Last to Drown is one of the Luna Press novellas. So Luna's a small press based in Scotland that do a sort of dedicated run of novellas. And they're like the little teeny tiny books, which they're just nice to hold. But they're also quite often very good. And The Last to Drown by Lorraine Wilson is, I think, my favourite of theirs that I read last year. And it's about a woman who, I'm just going to keep sounding depressing today, but she has lost her husband in a car accident. As she's survived, but she's disabled by it and also has lost a significant chunk of her memory. And the thing that she is grappling with is the fact that she cannot remember the last conversation she had with her husband. She can't remember, like, the last fight, the last time she told him she loved him. And she is desperate to get these memories back that she feels the world has unfairly taken from her. And she goes back to Iceland, where she was born and where her family come from. And she spends some time with her aunt, who still lives there. And then there is some intruding horror shenanigans. And it's kind of woven together with her physical pain stuff and painkiller experiences, her memory loss, and then this encroaching supernatural threat.
Well, so far, all these novellas have been really heavy.
Do I have a fun one? Do I have anything on here that's fun? I don't think I do. That probably says something about me that I don't want to tackle too heavy.
You're like, listen, I am going to challenge myself with these novellas. They're short and they will punch you in the face.
Looking at them, none of them are fun. Because of the rest of them, there's one that's about racism in the Caribbean in the 1800s and indentured Irish workers and their relationship with black slaves. There's one about, that one's just about colonialism. One about space fascists. So The Mountain Crown by Karin Lowachee it's got dragons in it. It's told from the perspective of an indigenous person in the world whose homeland has been taken over by very obviously pseudo-Europeans, and it is about as shit as it was historically. And it's that person's perspective on dragons are a thing that her people have like historically been connected with, and she's been sent with a task to do with some dragons, and the colonial settlers are being shits. Events occur.
I am really excited to read this, but I got it when it first was announced, when I knew nothing about it, because I love Lowachee's science fiction so much. Have you read her science fiction series?
This is the first of hers that I've picked up.
I'm super interested to see what you would think of the Warchild universe, which is Warchild, Burn Dive, Cage Bird, and then some other stuff. But those are the main 3. They're dark. They're very dark.
This is not an undark book.
I'm really glad that she's getting published again with new stuff, and I hope people discover her old stuff and it gets put back into print. So, fingers crossed. And if you read these, let me know. If you read Warchild, I love Warchild so much. I am a true stan for that book. One book on your list that I did want you to talk about, because I've heard so many people like mentioning it, was North Continent Ribbon.
technically this one is a short novel, per the author. To me, it felt like a novella, and some of that is because it was in the Neon Hemlock novella series, and I was like, oh, it's in a novella series, so it must be a novella. It's quite a short novel, but it's a mosaic. I am normally quite hit and miss about mosaic novels / novellas. I don't think I've actually read a mosaic novella before, so I don't always get on with them. But this one really worked because I think the theming is really strong between the stories. And it's sort of distant space, future, alien world, very different culture. It does a thing that I like where it doesn't over explain the culture, but it lingers quite often on showing you the culture. And I think that's one of the things where the author really excels, is in crafting culture in a way that feels very real.
I'm really actually excited about reading this one because I've just seen so many people talking about it, but not detail-wise. Like, it's always like, this book is like, it has a really interesting structure, or some of the ideas that are exploring are very cool. It's not like really what the book is about so much as like the vibe of the book.
And I think that's kind of a mosaic thing.
That's what I'm picking up from people who are talking about it. I'm like, I like vibes.
Yeah, I think because it's a strongly themed mosaic, but each individual bit is about very different things and about very different pieces of this world. It does make it hard to kind of sum up because it's doing like 5 or 6 different things. But yeah, vibes-wise, immaculate.
Okay, what's next?
I am going to move on from novellas, actually, because I have realised I will just be talking about a bunch of depressing novellas. Maybe I should talk about some things that are not depressing. So I read 2 short fiction collections last year. Both of them were very good. There's Deep Dream, which was edited by Indra Das, and it's got a banger list of authors in it. Vajra Chandrasekera has a novelette in it, which is the starting story, and it's meandering between being fiction and review at the same time. It's beautiful, and why does this man not have a Hugo Award is a question that I ask myself constantly. But it's also got Cassandra Kaur, Lavanya Lakshminarayan. There's an interview in the middle with Neil Clarke about AI in short fiction at the moment. Whiteley. Yeah, it's very good. The theme of it is about art and about creating art. And so all of the stories have in some way about making art, mostly in science fictional futures. But they've approached it all in very, very different ways. And some of them are quite light, some of them are quite heavy. There's one that's like 2 connected AIs who go around the universe and create installation art out of things like black holes and stuff for planets, which is just, it's kind of sweet. And then there are some that are very like radical and revolutionary, and some that are just weird. So that was really good. And then the other one was Embodied Exegesis, which is edited by Anne LeBlanc, which is a trans cyberpunk collection. A lot of it is quite focused on bodies, unsurprisingly, and like editing and reinventing, and it felt very grounded. And a lot of it is about like, it felt much more about like real people. I often find cyberpunk quite estranging. It's not a genre that I connect with very easily. I don't tend to find the people in it very relatable or very interesting, because it's all just some hacker dude hacking the mainframe and wearing a black trench coat in a neon lit city while being a misogynist. Sorry, cyberpunk, but
listen, sometimes cyberpunk is not beating that charge, given the way that the books and imagery of the time were scooped up by Hollywood.
But this is absolutely beating the charges. This is very interesting. Like, I picked it up because it had Anya Johanna De Niro, Maya Dean, Izzy Wasserstein, but people who are like, oh my god, you're writing in it, of course I'm going to read it. It does things with the ideas of cyberpunk that I have not seen done before, and that made it interesting and made it about people who felt real. And so one of them was, it was about people who had like body modifications, but in the sort of like, they had health body mods, or like something that did artificial hormones for them and stuff, but in a very plausible future America where these were heavily corporatized and protected by patent law and stuff, and people would try and, there's like pirated body mods and people trying to repossess body mods that have been illegally used. It felt like it was taking cyberpunk ideas and making them feel relevant to actual plausible worlds. Again, some of them quite depressing, but some of them not, and some of them very interesting. Did I read anything last year that wasn't depressing?
You have 2 sections left, which are short fiction and nonfiction. Anything in there? Lighthearted? Anything?
The non-fiction is not depressing. The non-fiction is Abigail Nussbaum's Track Changes, which I think it'd be quite hard to write a depressing review collection. You'd have to be deliberately aiming for it, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
I do not think that this is aiming for depressing, and certainly has not achieved depressing.
Track Changes is a collection of Abigail's blog.
Yes. One of the things that it's not organised chronologically, it's organised thematically, which is really neat, and it means that you're reading a bunch of things that feel connected to each other, which I really enjoyed. The problem I had with it, which is, it's a good problem, but I was reading some of them, and I read several review collections last year, though this was the only one that was published last year. And this is also the one where the books that the person read most align with things that I have read. And I put the book down and was like, I need to go and argue with her about some things. Which is very silly to come out of it and go, I've just read a review that someone wrote 5 years ago, and I need to go and start beef on the internet.
Abigail's the type of writer where she will make you be in your feelings about whatever she's written. Been there. Welcome to the club.
I fully intend to at some point. I have genuinely a to-do list on my phone. One of the items is to reread A Desolation Called Peace so that I can go and disagree with Abigail about it. Like in a friendly, collegiate way, not in a I will fight you in a Denny's parking lot way.
That's like the beauty of like science fiction criticism, right? And why I really miss it. I really miss the community that we had in the science fiction space before the corporatization of the internet, where we were all shuttled into these little social media silos. I really want it back. I keep hoping. Maybe one day.
You're not the first person who said that to me. For all that I was blogging, I was not really involved in any community then. And so people talk about it, about this heyday, and I'm like, oh man, I missed out on the good days.
Listen, they weren't all good because it was very dude heavy and sexist. But let me be super real. Also racist, very, very bigoted. Is in the way that people approach reviewing and thinking about books. It was fun, but there were also bad parts.
And obviously people are going to look back and think more fondly on it because that's what you do.
Yeah.
I have realised recently about myself that my hobby is not reading. My hobby is talking about books. And that I read to fuel the talking about books hobby. But that only works when people talk to me about books. So I need to find more people to talk to me about books who don't mind me disagreeing with them. That bit's quite important. I run a book club, and one of our central rules is you're allowed to dislike the book, you're allowed to talk shit about the book, you don't get to talk shit about the people. And that seems to work relatively well. I need more people to friendly argue with me about books.
Everybody, you can find Roseanna on Blue Sky and argue with her about books anytime. Go ahead. All her information will be in the show notes. You can find her.
I'm going to regret that, aren't I?
No, all our people who listen to our podcast still are really chill. They're good. They're good folks.
Actually, no, I did read a fun thing. I did read a nice, fun, happy thing. It is a novelette, I believe, called Old Habits Die Hard by Lawrence Harding. And it is sort of... Is Cadfile a thing that has made it to America?
My part of America, no.
I would be very unsurprised if it hadn't. Cadfile is... It was a series of books, but predominantly for me it was a series of TV shows with Derek Jacobi as the main character, who is a monk during the reign of Stephen Matilda, so the Anarchy, and he's a monk who solves crime, but he's also kind of action because he used to do fighting and stuff. He has a badass past that he has put behind him to become a monk. And Old Habits Die Hard is a fantasy story that really evokes Cadfile for me. There is a monk who has a past as a warrior, and he is pulled into some scary shenanigans and has to use his warrior skills to save his monk buds.
That should just be a tagline on the story. It has to uses warrior skills to save his monk buds, and then dash your name.
I'm trying to remember what the actual tagline on the book is, because I think the actual tagline is also quite funny. Alas, I cannot find it, but it's...
Who's the author for that?
Lawrence Harding. I think... She is a medieval historian, or was a medieval historian. So there's some of that in there, and there's a lot of stuff about relics and saints and medieval nonsense. But it's also just quite fun in the way that, like, adventure stories are. There's a guy that you really get behind, and he has to save a small portion of the world by kicking butt while in a monk's robe. I very uncomplicatedly love it.
So to wrap up your favorites list, because you have some short fiction on here. So what 2 short fiction pieces would you recommend to people?
I'm going to pick stuff that comes from free to access things, because I feel like saying things that are in books you have to buy is unfair. Because Flora had existed and I had loved her, which is in Samatar, so it's translated fiction, but it's translated by the author. So it's written and translated by Anna Martino. Is very prosy in the way that I would like. It's very intrusive prose and it's very beautiful. And then the other one is The Brotherhood of Montague St. Video by Thomas Ha, which is in Clarke's World. And it's just weird. It's weird and inexplicable in a sort of creepingly unnerving way. I kind of didn't really know what was going on the whole time I was reading it. And then you get to the end and you're like, and then you want to read it again to kind of understand it better. So yeah, those would be my two.
All of these will be in the show notes. I will also link to reviews that you have done.
I apologize in advance.
No, there's no apologies in advance. They're good reviews. They're good. So next up, in talking about some things we may or may not have loved, it's recent reading. You, as the guest, get to go first.
So I think the last novel I finished was called The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door by H.G. Parry. It is dark academia, which is a genre that I should probably stay away from, and then I don't. Because a lot of them are set in Oxford or Cambridge, of which I have first-hand experience, and a lot of them are written by people who have never set foot in either Oxford or Cambridge, and also apparently have never picked up a book. This one wasn't too bad. It was only a little bit wrong. I have a suspicion that this one was wrong because it got edited wrong. There's obviously a big problem with stuff where if it's written by someone who's not from the US, but it's edited or published by a US publisher, they change things to make it more US palatable. And so the author of this one is from New Zealand, but it uses professor in the American sense, not in the UK/New Zealand sense. So there is someone who is a relatively junior academic who is a professor. For me, that's like, no, that's not what that means. It's little niggly bits like that stood out. But this one, a lot of dark academia recently, I feel, has kind of gone off the rails because it's just about how sexy and glamorous dark academia is, which is not the point. And this one, at least, does try and tackle, like, privilege and the issues kind of at the heart of academia and the dark bit. And there is, like, a posh golden boy who has everything handed to him on a plate in life, but he is actually troubled and, you know, he's going to cause some problems. And then there is a scrappy underdog who has fought her way up to this hallowed magic university. It does a lot of stuff with that, and the story is set in between World War I and World War II, so time of big social upheaval, and then it doesn't land the ending very well. So it was a mixed one, but it was interesting.
I'm not sure I even like dark academia because I was in academia and I was just like, this sucks.
Yeah, preaching to the choir with you.
I'm very happy that dark academia is on the rise in literature so that people who love it can love it. I'm so happy for y'all. Well, my first book that I've read recently was Stories Are Weapons by Annalee Newitz. This is a nonfiction title that talks about propaganda. The book is very high level. So Newitz writes about the beginnings of propaganda in the US, how it was fostered during the wars. The most interesting story that I got from this book that I still think about is there's a science fiction author who was part of like the war office, the propaganda arm of the US military. This guy, Paul Linebarger, I guess, like wrote some propaganda guides. And he was also a science fiction author called Cordwainer Smith.
Oh.
Newitz draws all these lines between these 1940s, 1950s science fiction stories that are talking about politics and war between what's going on in the US government around like World War II. What a small world. Obviously, I think the book is more successful on like the research side, like the early sides where Newitz is talking about like the history of how the U.S. used propaganda to make all the manifest destiny garbage palatable to the people who lived here, all the colonizers. The book goes into more recent history around like Facebook, social media, the 2016 election, and how we were hoodwinked, I guess, by like Russian bot farms, which I think is a weaker part of the book, mostly because it's more recent history. On the whole, I think it's a very nice overview, and Newitz cites like a lot of great sources. Half of my time with the book was just going through the bibliography and being like, I'm going to read this book and also this book. It was really fascinating.
And it's reminded me of, and I'm just trying to find what it's called so I get it right, Speculative Whiteness, Science Fiction and the Alt-Right by Jordan S. Carroll. The author did a little online talk about it, and what you were saying about using science fictional stuff to kind of craft narratives was something that he talked about a lot, clearly thinking in the same space.
What's your next book?
I read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brando Sando. I've not read one of his books in ages. I've kind of fallen off the bandwagon. And someone was like, no, you should come back. You should try another one of the more recent ones, because he's grown as a writer, so maybe, you'll see it differently. I can totally see that he has, and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is very different from a lot of his other stuff that I've read, but it's also showing me that the Cosmere as a concept has kind of started to eat its own tail, because I've not read a bunch of stuff in the last sort of 5-6 years. I could see all the references that I was missing to various other bits of the Cosmere. It feels very at the point that Marvel has got to now, where consuming Marvel products is a hobby in its own right, because if you don't consume all of them, you won't fully get, because they love Easter eggs, they love references, they love interrelating, twining things, and it feels like Brando Sando has kind of got to that point as well. And so it was kind of sad to have gone, oh, I do see that he has grown as an author. I like this a little bit more than some of the stuff, because I quite liked the early Stormlight books, and then I fell off the wagon. I did not so much like Mistborn. I love a couple of his other books. And so I was like, oh, maybe I will refine some of that, the love I had for some of the older ones. And it was like, no, you are not committed enough to read every single thing this distressingly prolific man publishes. And so maybe his world is just not for you anymore. And it is what it is.
Always sad when it happens, but sometimes we just outgrow things.
And yeah, like if he published only one thing a year, maybe. But
maybe.
As it is, he publishes a gazillion things a year.
There's so much, and to get caught up, people are showing, okay, start here, and then they hold up this book and it's like this thick, right?
Yep.
What do you mean I have to read 5 of those to get caught up? Huh? I don't have the time.
No. And yeah, it's just become a hobby in its own right. And it's kind of, you were saying earlier about the siloification of fandom. And I think it kind of speaks to that. He's huge. If you go on TikTok, the dude has a following, and a heck of one. But then you go and talk to people in sort of Worldcon SFF space, and they don't read him. He doesn't come up on the awards shortlist or anything. It's just interesting that he is such a big deal, and yet such a not big deal in this space that I'm in.
It's definitely part of the thing where science fiction and fantasy fandom has niches. I feel like cliques is too formalized. We're not that organized. But yeah, the niches are interesting. The next book that I read was The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This was a book that everybody recommended to me, but it started with Jenny, our pal. And finally, as part of one of my reading projects this year, I did do it. I sat down. It took me 7 days to read this book because I did not know going into this book that there was a distance to the writing that made it feel more like literary science fiction to me. It was really, really good. I really, really liked it. It is about a character who lives in a world where they have discovered traveling between different parallel Earths. You can only visit another parallel Earth if you are dead in that world. And if you try to go to that world where you're the copy of you that is still alive there, you're going to die. It's going to be messy. It's no good. This book is about what happens when one of the multiverse travelers discovers haunting truths about the people in power in her world. And it was extremely well done. I loved it a lot. I really loved the character relationships too. Highly recommend The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. There's also a sequel out now called Those Beyond the Wall, which follows different characters.
I have not read it yet, but I've heard people saying good things about it. The sequel, I mean.
What's next for you?
This one is not a thing that has come out recently. This is a reread. But backlists are important too. Over the space of 2 days, despite them being audiobooks, I reread The Witness for the Dead and the Grief of Stones by Katherine Addison. So I spent 8 hours each day just listening to audiobook and sewing, because I know how to party.
That is a party, though.
So I reread The Goblin Emperor approximately once a year every year, and I always find something different in it when I do. I hadn't actually reread these 2 previously, but the third one's coming out soon, and I wanted to listen to something comforting. I love murder mysteries, especially sad elf murder mystery is... I'm so here for it. Sorry, sad gay elf murder mystery.
Sorry. Perfect summary. Sad gay elf murder mystery.
I mean, it is. The thing that I got from them this time, and from both of them together, because they were kind of both covering it, is the idea of duty. It's a theme that I tend to come back to a lot when I read things. as a brief aside, if I play any sort of RPG, D&D kind of zony thing, I am a terrible paladin main, and one of the paladin themes that I love is the idea of duty and a calling higher than oneself that one is bound to in some way. And the thing I was thinking about a lot when rereading Witness for the Dead and Grief of Stones this time is the main character is a priest of one of the gods of the world, and he specifically has a calling where he can hear the dead, and it's a thing that means a huge amount to him. He's been through some shit, some really heavy shit, but his calling and his connection to the god and the duty that comes with that has been with him the whole time, and he has a very complex relationship with it and with the world and the doing of his duty, and I really, really enjoy that. And it's a thing that I can constantly just sort of pick at, and I like exploring, and I like that fantasy is quite often interested in that as a theme in a way that doesn't tend to come up in modern sort of contemporary fiction, because we don't have analogous institutions where it can come out in the interesting ways that it does in fantasy.
Yeah, because all our current institutions are corrupt as hell, so who wants to have a duty to those? There was a thread about this recently, I think, by G. Willow Wilson. We're living in a world where the idea of duty and like having a higher calling to like an institution or a task is harder because like the people in power are corrupt and it doesn't feel good anymore. And there's no like way to have that be a thing in like modern storytelling because culturally we're just not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I will try to link it in the show notes if I can find it again.
I mean, yeah, I would like to read that. I mean, I find G. Willow Wilson quite interesting a lot of the time anyway.
I will find it for everybody, you and the listeners. Put it in the show notes.
The thing that I was noticing a lot is people will thank him for doing something and be very grateful to him in this book. And he will always go, oh, it is my duty that I'm called to do. And it's kind of going, you don't need to thank me. I'm just doing this thing that I am. It is beyond thanks. It just is. And I find that very, very interesting. And also it's just very relatable as a British person who cannot deal with people saying nice things to me or thanking me or anything earnest. I feel very connected to Thara Kelleher is like, oh no, a compliment. No, cannot cope. And I relate to that intensely.
This feels like the secret of your preference for this trope is coming out. Like, we've revealed it.
He's just delightful. I love him very much.
I really need to reread The Goblin Emperor. I remember reading it before it was out. Like, I had a PDF copy of the arc.
I'm so jealous.
And I read it and I went to the person who gave it to me and I'm like, what the heck is with this language? What's going on in names? And he was like, listen, don't worry about it. Read it like you know what's going on. Read it like you understand all the different names. He really saved The Goblin Emperor for me because I might not have continued that book because the language was a lot. That's another book where you're not going to ignore the writing in this book. Nope, it's there.
You cannot.
And then it became like one of my favorites of that year. I've read more fantasy now, so I'm more... Because at the time I hadn't been reading fantasy. I had been out of fantasy for a little bit. I was coming back in and I was just like, let's go to the deep end. Let's go to the 24-foot deep end of the fantasy pool and just hop right in with no arm floaties. That was a mistake.
Although I do think the author did do everyone a solid with it as well, because she puts the pronunciation guide and the language guide at the front. Sometimes they do that at the back and I hate it. But no, I knew how to pronounce things at the start. And that's what I needed.
My PDF copy did not have that.
Oh, of course, because if it's yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah, so now you see my dilemma, but no, it's good. I'm making it sound like a incredibly hard read, but it's not. Like, if you have read a little bit of fantasy, you just go in, read it. Don't worry so much about the names and the language and whatever. Just like go in like you know what you're doing and trust the book, and the book will take you on the journey properly. It won't judge you. It's a nice book.
You'll meet a lot of thoroughly delightful characters. And one of the reasons I reread The Goblin Emperor is there is a bit, and it's about 3/4 of the way through, where the main character reveals a thing that has happened to him that's quite bad. And one of his bodyguards, who has been really uptight the whole book and has slowly warmed to him, finds out about this bad thing that has happened to the main character, and he just gets angrier and angrier quietly, and then he just shouts, "Monstrous! He should be flogged through the streets!" And then he's really embarrassed that he's had this outburst of, like, protectiveness, and he goes all red and sort of huffs out of the room. It warms my heart.
People having emotions, but repressed is pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, my last book is a romance novel that I just finished, and I feel very badly about, like, not liking this book. It's called That Prince Is Mine by J.C. Lee. It is a book about a prince who is a visiting professor at a California university, but secretly nobody knows that he's a prince of this like fake European country.
Ah, one of those.
He meets this Korean woman who is a chef and wants to start her own culinary school and is working really hard. The premise is very cute. There's like a bunch of family drama, like on both sides, like because the guy has like a bodyguard and a friend from childhood. So there's like family stuff, friend stuff. Like the parental relationships are incredibly good. I thought I really loved all like the character relationships in this book. I thought they were so well done. However, there's just a lot of hand-wavy stuff in this book. What do you mean in the age of the internet nobody knows this guy is a prince from a European country? What do you mean? Huh? How is it a secret? How is this happening? The romance is extremely cute. There's some lying that I wasn't crazy about, but like it works in the sense of the story. The problem that I had was like I was reading this book. I was like, okay, I can hand wave. It's a romance novel. Listen, yes, a Korean chef finds a prince and maybe he's going to become a princess. It's like a little fairy tale. But what I had a problem with is the book like really hammers on the main character's culinary school, the woman who wants to open this culinary school to teach people how to cook like Korean royal court food, like Korean food. And it's really important to her. She really wants to do it. Like she's trying to find space for it. She's having like practice classes. She does private lessons with people. It's an extremely important part of her story. And then we get to the end and the thread of her culinary school plans is completely dropped at the end. What do you mean? What do you mean this whole thing, this whole time in this whole book? The woman who had this dream of being a successful chef, a culinary school teacher. What do you mean she just dropped it? What do you mean? What do you mean? Far be it from me to tell other women, like, no, you can't give up your dreams to go have be a princess and have a princess babies. You know, whatever. You do you. That's fine. It's your choice. But like in a book where the whole book had just been like hammering this culinary school dream home over and over and over, for them to just drop it, I was like, no.
Not to say anything nice about Disney, but at least in The Princess and the Frog, she does her dream.
When I say this book drops it, once we're having, again, trying not to spoil like the plot, but like once we're having like the big grand reunion, the culinary school dream stuff is gone. It's out of the narrative. It's like it didn't exist.
I desperately want to know, what is the fake European country called?
Oh my god, I wish I could remember.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up. Roulem?
Yeah.
When people make up fake countries, I'm always like, what is it called? How implausible does that sound? This one actually not too bad. I'm trying to remember what the one in the Princess Diaries is called, because that one's ridiculous.
Genovia.
That's it, yeah.
Of course I can remember that one from a movie I've seen once, of course, but the audiobook that I listened to a week ago, nope, can't do it. I just had a lot of, what do you mean? What do you mean you're giving up your culinary? Like, what do you mean it doesn't come up again? Huh? What? Like, I was really invested in this culinary dream of yours. What do you mean? Anyway.
Yeah, I think I would be too invested in but she has a plan. I think that would bug me as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably what it is. It's probably not so much about, like, the fact that she decides to, like, change maybe her dream now is to be a princess and, like, support her husband. But for me, when I make a plan, and, like, if my plans get derailed, I'm a mess. My whole day is ruined. Like, so I think I'm probably, probably definitely reacting to, like, what do you mean my plan is derailed? Okay, the world is ending. The world is ending. Got it.
Relatable.
That was recent reading. All the books that we talked about will be in the show notes if you want to check it out. If you've read any of them and you want to let us know your thoughts, you can email us at fingerhappyhour@gmail.com. You can also give us book recs, because now everybody knows that you like sad stories about history.
And duty. Lots of duty.
So if you have any book recs, like, write in and let us know. To wrap up, I'm starting a new segment. Like, I sprung this on you. I'm so sorry. Because the world is on fire. It's just good to be happy about things. So I was just like, let's bring back the rec section, but for things that just made us happy. So what is a thing that's been on the internet that's made you happy?
So you added this in, and I went, oh, I go on the internet, I will be able to think of something. My brain just immediately went tumbleweed.
Yeah, I knew it was going to happen.
I did remember, mainly by doom scrolling TikTok at lunchtime today, that there is a thing that keeps cropping up on my TikTok. It's a slideshow of images, and it's a little quiz where they show you sort of 6 or 7 pictures of UK train stations, and you have to guess where the train station is. And they are so hard. They are so hard. And every time I come across one, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get one this time. And I get really excited about it. And if I get one right, it makes my day. They find the worst possible pictures of the station, so it's all just like, that could be anywhere. That's just some concrete. Who knows? And then you see the answer and you're like, but I've literally been there. How did I not know? And I love it in a slightly unreasonable way. And then occasionally I get one right and I get very overexcited.
My thing is also from TikTok. The thing on TikTok that's making me happy is that there was this woman who fosters cats, and she fostered out this little orange cat called Garbanzo to this person. But then something bad happened, and the cat ended up coming back to her in some way. I didn't actually get the whole backstory. I've just been watching the videos as they happen. But she got this cat back after a few years, and the cat's like extremely traumatized and overweight. So now she has this cat in a room, and she is like trying to rebuild trust with this cat. And if you follow the story, if you follow the videos, if you watch them in order, you can see her go in and the Garbanzo, which is the cat's name, will hiss at her. But as you watch the videos, the hissing goes away like day after day after day. I am so invested in this cat. If you want a heartwarming cat story, Garbanzo story on TikTok is extremely cute. I try to remember that people are good. That was fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show to talk to me about all your favorite things.
There were a lot of things. There were perhaps too many things. I should have put some things back.
No, there's not too many things. Everybody loves a rec list, and if you don't, what are you doing here? Are you lost? I will put a link to her Blue Sky and her blog and her category on Nerds of a Feather in the show notes, so you guys can go find her work. She's an incredible writer. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you want to reach us, you can find us at fangirlhappyhour.com. You can email us at fangirlhappyhour@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Sorry, I'll be quick, I promise.
No, that's what, listen, there are no rules. Who cares? No rules here.